Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It's good to stand to speak on this bill because there are some in our community who are sceptical about this legislation, and as a Liberal I can understand why. And there have been many emails in my inbox from constituents with concerns, and I really would like to address those concerns. And I acknowledge those who sent emails about freedom of liberty, freedom of speech, overreach by the government and privacy or digital ID concerns in particular. And I very much respect their views on this bill, and so I want to address those first before talking about the what, the whos and the hows of this particular bill. So firstly, I just want to share one submission to Labor's very short 24-hour inquiry by my local priest in Surfers Paradise, who is also a member of my Moncrieff Community Cabinet, which is filled with community leaders and faith leaders. And so I thought it important that I read out his public submission that he also sent to me to my inbox. So I'll just quote him. I'm writing to express my profound opposition to the proposed Online Safety Amendment, Social Media Minimum Age Bill 2024. This legislation, under the guise of protecting children, represents a troubling overreach of government authority, violates the sanctity of personal privacy and undermines the freedoms that underpin a healthy and just society. My concern is rooted in a belief that government should protect liberties, not restrict them unnecessarily, and that the moral responsibility for guiding the young should lie with families and communities, not the state. As a priest, I believe it is the responsibility of families and communities, not the state, to guide children in their use of technology, and our role as a society should be to support and equip individuals to live with wisdom and freedom, not to impose authoritarian measures under the guise of safety. And so I want to reassure the priest and many others in the community that the Coalition has listened to your concerns, and we have been working with the Shadow Minister to work with the government to amend the bill in the Senate to make some very, very important changes. And I might just highlight too, for those who did send those messages to my officer's inbox, and I do read those, that there are also many more, in fact, emails in the inbox that support this bill, and no one more than those parents who want to help protect their children from online harm. And so the Coalition has negotiated some changes. We've significantly strengthened the planned legislation in at least two areas of concern. Firstly, in relation to privacy, I just want to outline that those privacy issues are really of utmost importance to us in the Coalition and many of our supporters. And that's why we've worked to strengthen this legislation. And this bill prohibits platforms from using information collected for age assurance purposes for any other purpose unless explicitly agreed to by the individual. And once information has been used for age assurance, it must be destroyed unless the individual agrees to it being retained. Further to that, failure to delete information constitutes a breach of the Privacy Act, and the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner will also provide oversight of the privacy provisions related to this bill. So there will be new provisions stating that people cannot be compelled, and I'll repeat, new provisions that we have negotiated, stating that people cannot be compelled to provide digital ID or government-issued identity documents such as driver's licences or passports under this legislation. Now, also following our discussions with the government, changes will be made so that the Communications Minister will be able to make rules specifying actions that social media platforms are not required to take in order to comply with the legislation. Now, this will enable important ministerial oversight of the process by which the e-Safety Commissioner issues guidelines under the new laws. And that's very, very important, a bit of a safety net there for the e-Safety Commissioner, as the Minister will have oversight. And these are important changes which we believe, which the Coalition believes, and the Shadow Minister, that will strengthen this bill. Now, why do we need this bill to start with? And is this a seminal moment for our country? I'd like to talk about why Australian families need this bill, and why Australian children under 16 need this bill. As lawmakers, we really must do what we can to keep our children safe. And as a grandmother of an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, an 18-month-old and a 2-week-old, and another one coming in March, a proud grandmother, I couldn't sleep at night letting an opportunity pass where I could do something to keep those children and everybody else's children safe from online harm. We must do what we can. We come to this parliament to protect our children, and that is our task, and this bill absolutely seeks to achieve that. If we as adults don't do all we can to bring the online environment in line with the real world, then we're failing to keep our future generations safe from harm. We know there's widespread concern and evidence about the severe mental health impact of social media on children. And we've seen disturbing global trends in youth mental health since the rise of social media, especially for girls. And I just want to outline a few things, some evidence. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, there has been more than a 3-fold increase in the rate of intentional self-harm, hospitalisations for girls under 14 from 2008 to 9 to 22-23. There's been large increases in the rate of mental health issues amongst children and young people. And as at 2022, there was an independent report on self-harm commissioned by Australia's TGA that noted very large increases in all intentional self-poisonings in older children, adolescents aged 10 to 19, this is very confronting, worldwide over the recent decade. And just finally, clinical psychologist Dr. Danielle Einstein told the Senate inquiry into the bill that any benefits of social media to mental health are far outweighed by the disadvantages. She said, "I do not see any benefits for mental health from social media. I've looked really hard at the evidence, and even if there were to be some, I think they are far outweighed by their disadvantage. But for mental health, I do not see any benefits." And so this legislation, I believe, and the Coalition believes, my colleagues believe, the member for Forrest believes, that it will not only provide protections for our young, but importantly, it will also arm parents with the laws to give them some help to set guardrails for their children. Guardrails so they can say no with confidence. No to harms, no to bullying, no to body shaming and eating disorders, no to inappropriate content, no to R-rated content, no to bullies, and no, especially, to predators. Those things that have pushed young people to the brink, to take their own lives because of what they've been exposed to online. It must stop. And I would just highlight who it was that led this debate. It was a man who has spent his entire adult life protecting women and children, particularly, from harm. And the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, has led the national debate on this social media age limit. And in June, the Coalition committed to implementing an age limit of 16. and our leader announced that a coalition government would raise the age of social media access to 16 and said it would be at the top of his priority list for his first 100 days in office. Make no mistake, he has arm wrestled the government to this position. And it comes after the coalition led the policy debate about the need for action around online safety, including our attempts to legislate an age verification scheme last November, and the introduction of the world-leading Online Safety Act by the coalition in government. 5 months after the Leader of the Opposition announced support for setting an age limit for social media, the Prime Minister has now jumped on board. And this bill is designed to set an age limit of 16, which is to reduce the harms that social media is causing to young people. Now, the bill provides for a new, broader definition of social media companies, and that is age-restricted social media platforms, which will now capture Snapchat, as well as other major social media platforms such as TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram and X. But importantly, there will be a rule-making power for the Minister to exclude specific classes of services from the definition. What that means, in plain speak, is that there's a carve-out for messaging services and online games that many young people enjoy, including my grandchildren, and services which support health and education of users, which would include YouTube as well as WhatsApp, Messenger for Kids, Reach Outs, Peer Chat and Google Classroom. So this is not the end of the use of devices. This is simply a better option than doing nothing to keep our children safe online. And it requires relevant social media companies to take reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted users from having an account with a social media platform. And now penalties will apply. Failures to comply with the privacy provisions can result in fines of up to $50 million. That's got to hurt. And failures to take reasonable steps to identify underage users can result in fines of up to $49.5 million. And we know children will get around it, and some parents will get around it with their children, and that's the reality of laws and not complying with laws. People get around laws all the time. But it's better than the alternative because for the overwhelming majority of parents who want to protect their children from online harms, this bill will help you to help your children. And that's so very important. And as the party that believes in the strength of the family unit, this is a very important step for healthier families and for healthier young people who are suffering due to what they have been exposed to online. And we must do this because it's the right thing to do. And the alternative, to do nothing, is simply not an option. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.